Good. We're continuing on with the Sermon on the Mount. We're going to just go right up to Matthew 5, right where we left off. Today's message is going to really set the tone to understand the next 6 teaching things that Jesus gives in this. So the next section's full of 6 of these phrases. You've heard it said, but I tell you. And we're going to use this section today to set up how do we understand each of these next 6 ones. You've heard it said, but I tell you. You've heard it said, but I tell you. You've heard it said, but I tell you. They all stem from understanding this particular section. And so for the last couple of weeks, right, we started with the Beatitudes. We talked about salt, then we talked about light. We're looking at this message that Jesus gives in the public stage right as he's starting this ministry. There's not the 12 disciples yet. He's got this ragtag group of injured, sick outcasts following him, and he's delivering this message about what the kingdom is all about. This is this main theme that Matthew gives over and over and over. And hopefully if you've been alert since last July, and we've been going through the entire book of Matthew, I don't know if you know, we'll finish the whole book by the time this is over. We'll get this kingdom idea has been there, right? This kingdom of heaven. This is what he's going around announcing so much to all these people. The story of God reclaiming the world. This is what this kingdom idea we saw in Genesis, right? And so he's announcing it to this group, the wrong group, right? It's the outcasts, the sick, the no one's talking to him. He says, you are the ones that will be brought into the kingdom. It's upside down. It's certainly not what you would expect. If I was a ruling person and I took over a thing, I wouldn't be like, all right, you guys with the broken legs and everything, you're in charge now. I'd find the guy who's got the military might, the wealth, with the influence, and put them in charge. But he's saying, no, this is where the kingdom is going. It's upside down from the world. And so he specifically moves towards them. And so he brings this message from this mountain. He's teaching this good news. And that's the end of Matthew 4. And he's got these insignificant people. He says, you're blessed, you're salt, you're light. Remember y'all? Give me a y'all. Great. So this is where we're at right now. And we're going to move from this sort of blessing and statement into what a lot of people see as this ethical teaching of Jesus. We get into this sort of the ethics of the kingdom. You've heard it said, don't murder. You've heard it said, don't commit adultery. You've heard it said, you're with me. This sort of feels like these sort of ethical teachings. But they're way more than that. They're a part of this kingdom announcement. It's about God's people coming under the rule and reign of this king and finding a new orientation to this upside-down world. Because this kingdom is an alternate community where the values are different. So he's bringing it right to the poor and the outcast, should be bringing it to the healthy, wealthy, wise. There's this upside-downness happening, and we've got to reorient. How do you function in this community that seems like the rules are different than the world that I live in, this alternate world? It's a community where generosity and peacemaking and serving and humbling ourselves and seeking other people's well-being is the top priority. That's the kingdom he's creating. It's alternate world where it's not about get me, get my money, get my place, step on people how I get there. This is what Jesus is setting up. The way that I've heard this described is, did anyone here drive? Hands up. Do we drive? Ever drive before? How many of you, when you get in the car, who drove here today? Hands up. How many of you thought when you got in the car, you got in and you're like, okay, key in the ignition, okay, I turn, and then right when it turns over, the car has started, I don't need to keep grinding the starter, right? And then I check my mirrors, and I put my seatbelt on, I double check to make sure they're buckled in too, and then I depress the brake, and I engage from park into reverse, probably, unless you want to drive through your house if you park in a garage, or you back into your garage. That would make me uncomfortable, actually. You probably put it in reverse, and then you just lightly depress the pedal. You're not going to go too fast. And then you back up and you go, depress brake, engage drive. Now spin wheel by moving hands like this. How many of you do that? It's very mechanical when you're driving. You don't think about it, do you? Have you ever been driving and you're driving home and you go, I have no idea how I got here. I probably fell asleep. At some point, I hope I stopped at all the lights. Are you with me? You don't think about it. You just drive. Right? It's like last week I talked about musical instruments and scale. Maybe that's this one. I think that's at the end of this one. But it's the same with playing an instrument, right? I don't pick up, I would have to now. But if I picked up my trumpet when I was playing all the time, I wouldn't have to be like, how do I play a C sharp? I just know it. My fingers have figured it out. It's very, very, think about though, if I took you and I plopped you in Ireland and I said, you need to drive. They drive on the wrong side of the road. Let's just put it, it's the left, but it's the wrong side. And they're all manual transmissions. So I don't know if you've ever sat in a manual transmission, but if you in America, you shift with your left hand, or no, your right hand. Your right hand. It makes tons of sense. It feels great. In England and Ireland, when you sit on the other side of the car, you shift with your left hand. You have to think about it a little bit. You ever drive on the wrong side of the road, you start thinking really quick. When I was I don't know if you know this story, when it was a Christmas dance, and we went to, a bunch of friends of us, we went to Casa, we ate dinner, and the person driving pulled out of Casa and didn't realize you couldn't make a left turn on the highway there, and they were driving on the wrong side of the highway for a few moments. Now let me tell you something. You think real hard when you're on the wrong side of the road. You're not rote memorying anymore. You're thinking real hard. If I did that to Ireland, you would have a problem. Now, if I wasn't paying attention, if I was driving left side of the road, like I drive right side of the road, what ultimately is going to happen to me while I drive? Go real loud. Who said it? A car accident, right? It's a collision. You're going against the grain. There's gonna be a smack. Are you with me? This is a great way to think about what Jesus is asking his followers to do and why he spends so much time talking about what life in the kingdom is like. It is counterintuitive. There's an intuition driving on the side of the road we're comfortable with. I don't think about it. I just do it. You put me on the other side of the road, all of a sudden my brain's working real hard. If you put a trombone in my hand instead of a trumpet, I'm working real hard to remember what slide spot is an F. It's not intuitive to me anymore. And ultimately, if I'm playing trombone, I'm whacking somebody in the head with it. Because I don't know, right? It's counterintuitive. He's trying to teach this new way of being a human. And it overlaps with the ways that we already live. Some of which it exposes how messed up the way the world asks us to live is. And so it's calling us, right, it's this long section, it's to retrain our brains for how we live. And it takes a lot of energy, a lot of intentional effort individually and as well as communally. Okay? This is where this analogy breaks down. I'm sorry, I always have to tell when an analogy breaks, right? Jesus isn't gathering a whole bunch of people and saying, let's all go somewhere else and set up this awesome kingdom where we're going to drive on the other side of the road. That's not what he's saying, okay? It's not like, we'll just be this great community and we'll sit over here and we'll drive on the left side, they'll drive on the right, it'll be fine, everyone will be great. That's not what he's saying. He's saying, let's do the opposite right now. Everybody else will drive right side, we're driving left. Everybody else will treat their neighbors like garbage, we're not going to do that. You're going to live it out in the world day by day, in the lives and relationships. You're going to be salt and light in a world that doesn't expect it. If all of us left here right now and I said, here's what we're going to do. We're walking out, everyone get in your car, we're driving on the left side of the road. We're doing it right here in Whitley County. We're changing the way we drive. We're changing the way we drive. You with me? It's a collision. You get in a car accident. And Jesus is challenging them. You're going to go out and live and be members of a new and different kingdom that's completely upside down. The value systems are different. And you're going to go live that way. And it's going to be tense. There's going to be tension. There's going to be conflict. And there's going to be collisions. Not just for himself or followers, but Jesus himself, right? If you look forward, we're going to skip ahead. Just see how this whole thing ends. Matthew 7, 28 through 29. I know we're skipping a little bit, but it makes sense. Matthew 7. For me, it's on page 1000. That's Matthew 9. Matthew 8. Matthew 7. 1601. How great is that? 28 through 29. When Jesus had finished saying these things, so the entire Sermon on the Mount that we're going to cover, he talks through 3 chapters. When he finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teaching, but because he taught as one who had authority and not as teachers of the law. The crowds were amazed at his teaching. You have these crowds that Jesus has finished this super long teaching with, and the people are stunned. They can't believe it. Why are they stunned? Why? Because he was teaching as one who had authority and not as the teachers of the law. He was teaching like one who had authority, not like the teachers of the law they're used to. Why is that stunning to these people? Because they had an existing authority in their culture, and it's called the law. Everyone say law. The law. And the people who teach the law are part of this authority as well. So when you look at verse 29 and you see the word law, don't think of anything like law in our culture. It's not like he taught us one who understood penal codes with like, look at M-3537C that says you can't run red lights. That's not what we're talking about. When you see that, you need to think of the Jewish background, and you need to start saying this word in your head. Everyone say Torah. Good. At the core meaning, it's teaching or instruction. This is Jewish setting for Torah is a reference to the first 5 books of the Bible. What we call the Pentateuch, usually, Jewish tradition calls the Torah the books of Moses. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. And even more specific than that, the law refers to a set of passages within those first books that are the commandments of the Torah. And you may have heard of 10 of them. Anyone heard of the 10 Commandments before? They made a movie. Charlton Heston plays Moses, and it's very long. It came on 2 VHS tapes. That's how old I am. I remember 2 VHS tapes for it. But you probably know the first 10, but there are 613 of them. So that's the reference here. So the 613 laws found in the first books of the Bible. And in Israel's day, and this forms the scriptures for these people. This is God's word. This is where people go to learn about God's will. So why does this stun people? Because Jesus sets himself as an authority, completely independent from the teachings found in the Torah. For he taught as one who had authority, not as one who teaches from the Torah. Do you hear this? This is this first collision, this kingdom. This is their law, and he's coming in writing new words in it, and there's, bam, do you hear it a little bit? It's what I'm doing here right now, sort of. I don't actually claim, I don't write new words in the Bible. I don't do that. I just kind of see what's in there. Sometimes there's some things in between the lines that exist, but I'm not like, I know it says don't murder, but like, wouldn't it be great, right? I don't change the text that's in there. I don't actually claim to know very much or any particular reason why you should listen to me in particular. Some of you are just like, wandered in here one day and you're like, I guess this guy's all right. There's no reason you should listen to me over AJ. He just left the building. AJ, I look back, he's gone. There's no reason you should listen to me or AJ or Adam or any, like I bear no more authority over the understanding of God's will than anybody else. I just read what's in there. But I think we should listen to what's in there. You with me? So I do my best to unpack it, because if we accept this as some form of authority, as a community of believers, but what's happening here with Jesus is he's saying, I got a lot of new stuff to teach you that's not found in here. You need to pay attention as if you were hearing it straight from God's mouth. So you can sit, this is why they were like, you catch it a little bit. He's saying he's adding to the Torah. I don't know if I like this. Like if I go up here and be like, let's turn to 1 Harmon 23. Right? You'd be like, I don't know about this guy, right? All of a sudden it'd be a little weird. And it stuns people. Who's this guy? Why does he have this authority? And it leads to this collision with Jesus right there. Because the Pharisees hear about this and they have to plot how to get rid of this guy. You with me? So let's read Matthew 5:17. We're going to start where we're at today. And it's going to set the tone for the next several weeks to understand where we're going with these next couple you've heard it says. 17. Don't think that I have come to abolish the law or prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. When he says prophets, he's referring to the next main section of Hebrew scriptures in Jewish tradition. So the Torah and the prophets is a way, it's like a phrase that means the totality involved. Right? So it's all of the scriptures. When he says the Torah and the prophets, means all the scriptures. It's like when I say, I don't know, I did it, now all these are leaving my brain. I went to the ends of the earth, right? You've looked everywhere. You with me? It's this saying, it means the whole of scriptures. So Jesus says, don't think I've come to undermine all the scriptures. I haven't come to do that. And if he says, don't think I've come to do that, what does he assume that the people, when he hears them say it, talking to these, say, what does he assume the crowd hears? So he says, hey, don't think I've come to do this. What's his assumption about what the crowd thinks he's doing? He's doing that, right? Don't think I've come to get rid of it. I know it sounds like it. Everyone pump the brakes for a minute. You with me? That's not what I'm doing here, right? That's what you think I'm doing. but I'm not actually. That's not what's happening here. I'm not undermining the ancient scriptures. I haven't come to abolish them. I've come to fulfill them. Now, all throughout Matthew, the language of fulfilling in prophecy is seen. Matthew makes a big deal of this. The trick to know if you're reading out of Matthew, if you ever, for some reason, are in a New Testament class that I'm teaching, right? The trick, I put a phrase up and I go, which gospel is this from? Now, the trick is, if it says, you've heard it said, or this was done to fulfill, or something along those lines, it's from Matthew. He does it a lot. He rides in on a donkey. This was done to fulfill the great prophecy that the blah, 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 blah is seen in Isaiah. This is Matthew all over. This is how you know it's Matthew. Matthew puts this all through there. The writer is going to highlight a story about Jesus. He's going to stop. He's going to address the reader. Did you know that this was spoken to fulfill what was prophesied in Jeremiah? This is all over. So he says, no. I haven't come to abolish it. I've come to fulfill the prophets. What does it mean to fulfill something? What does that mean? It's about cultivating a mindset. The first thing is remembering the whole story of Israel, right? These key passages in the prophets and the scriptures. Think through the story. Okay, go all the way back. We looked at Genesis. Adam and Eve are made. They bite from an apple tree. They're banished from the garden. Then a whole bunch of bad things happen, and then the world is flooded. And then God's like, okay, I can start something with Noah here, maybe. You with me? So finally it gets to this person in Abraham, this family. And out of Abraham, he says, I'm going to make you a big nation. And I'm going to bless you to bless other nations. And then that nation gets lost and they go down to Egypt and they become enslaved. And so God rescues them out of Egypt. He takes them to a desert at the foot of Sinai. And God appears to them in a cloud and thunder and lightning. He says, I'm going to make you a kingdom of priests. And I'm going to show my character to the other nations through the way that you act. And this is the covenant I'm making. You live by this covenant and people are going to see exactly the type of God that I am. And the terms of this relationship between God and Israel are these 613 commandments. He says, live like this. This is how nations are going to see you. We're going to bless by the way that you live. So it creates this kingdom that will live distinctly and differently to show who God is to other nations. So if you summarize 600 years by this question, how did they do? Not very good. Not very good. They didn't do very good. Epic fail. God lets them go to ruin by honoring their dignity of their decisions. Right? They're going to run this whole thing into the ground. They get kicked out of their land and they're now sitting in exile because Babylon has taken over. And if God had any sane bone in his entire body, he's going to call his losses and walk away. You with me? Why bother? These 600 years, they haven't figured it out one time. If he had one sane bone in his body, he's walking away. But he doesn't, right? Israel is the ones that have walked away. So God's not going to walk away from the promises made. So Jeremiah, one of the great prophets, is sitting in exile in Babylon, and he has these words he's writing to this generation of people. Jeremiah 31 through 34. I know it's Jeremiah 31. If you've never heard this before, this is like one of the greatest little prophecies in the whole Bible here. Here we go. You ready? I'm going to mark that spot. There we go. Jeremiah 31 through 34. The days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the people of Israel and the people of Judah. It will not be like the covenant I made with their ancestors when I took them by the hand to lead them out of Egypt, because they covenant, though I was a husband to them. This is the covenant I will make with the people of Israel after that time. I will put the law, Torah, in their minds and write it on their hearts. I will be their God, they will be my people. No longer will they teach their neighbor or say to one another, know the Lord, because they will all know me, from the least to the greatest. For I will forgive their wickedness, and they will remember their sins no more. The emphasis here is that Israel's the ones that have walked away, right? The covenant was broken not because God was unfaithful, but because they were. But that doesn't mean the whole thing is off. There's a new covenant coming, and it's going to be different. It's going to be distinct. You've got 613 commandments, very specific terms of agreement for Yahweh with the ancient people of Israel. It didn't work. And it didn't work not because the covenant was bad. Everyone say this. It's not that the covenant was bad. Great. It's because Israel was bad. Right? And so what's God going to do? He's going to bring about a creation of a new relationship with the people. But it's going to be different. Because it's going to be written on their minds and on their hearts. Why is this new and distinct? Are we doing away with the Torah and its commands? No, I will put my law on their and their We're not getting rid of it, are we? The role is changing. It's not about them being a written code that you obey, right? It's about a God who does something that embeds and internalizes the will in their hearts and the minds of the people. He embeds the motivation and desire and knowledge of how to live as a human for God. It's an expression of relationship. Are you with me? I will be their God, they will be my people. They'll know what to do because there'll be a degree of closeness and connection. They'll make obedience no longer a duty but a joy, an expression of the things that are actually deep inside. He's talking about renovating the human heart, not having to compel obedience. What I'm going to do is something that will make obedience natural. And what is that something? I mean, how do you get someone to that kind of place? It's the last sentence. It's the last one. For I will forgive their wickedness and will remember their sins no more. Think of your own life, maybe a situation where you really blew it with someone. Just take 15 seconds here. You completely blew it with someone. You could not have done worse in a relationship to injure or harm them. We just put it right there. Great, good, get it, good. Get that in your mind. What happens next, we may not all have experienced, but some of us will have with that person that we hurt, right? That we get to a place where they come towards us and they forgive us for what we did to hurt them. Even if I don't deserve it. But they forgive me. Something changes in that relationship. If you've ever experienced it before, you know what I'm talking about, because all of a sudden in that relationship, there's this bond that is stronger than just friendship. There's undeserved grace between the two of you. It is a really unnatural act to do with another person. Alpha male chimpanzees in the wild don't apologize to the other male chimpanzees. They pick up a rock and they bash their skulls in. This is how it works in nature. Okay? When they've got conflict, they're not sipping tea talking about how they could have done better next time, right? This is not a natural thing. To forgive is an unnatural way. It's almost a uniquely relational parent bond to human beings. And if you've ever been forgiven by someone, when you totally wronged them, you know what kind of changes take place in that relationship. You think about that person, you want to do right by them in the future, you want to honor that forgiveness. It's a gratefulness, it's in this care because of this crazy thing this person did for you that you didn't deserve. That's what Jeremiah is talking about here. God is going to move towards his people in such a great act of forgiveness that suddenly the 613 commands of the Torah are not going to be like, you must obey. But it's going to be internalized. It's going to renovate their heart and their mind so deep that it becomes this natural response. It's going to happen with a great act of forgiveness. And Jeremiah leaves this promise standing there in the Hebrew Scriptures. And the rest of Israelite history plays out with this covenant not realized. Until Jesus comes on the scene. And these are precisely the promises that he sees himself picking up and bringing into reality. He sees himself taking people and making them Jeremiah 31 people. The people of a new covenant. And he said so at his Last Supper, right? He takes the wine and he takes the bread and he says, this is the cup of the new covenant. Ooh. He picks up the bread and he says, this is the body which is broken for the new covenant. He sees Jesus enacting God's forgiveness. He's not going to wait for tax collectors and prostitutes to come and repent and offer sacrifices in the temple. He's going to go get them. Who's hanging around him at the Sermon on the Mount? It's them. He brought them to him. It's a preemptive strike of grace on God's part. Jesus is enacting this when he eats with tax collectors and the sick and the outcasted. The people gather around him in this teaching moment. It's not a secret. He's not compromising the law. He's calling them to repent and follow him. He moves them in a way that he loves and respects on them. And it draws these people to him, and suddenly these people begin to notice their desire to obey God and follow Jesus in a distinct way. And it starts to mess with their minds and their hearts a little bit. This is a renovation of the heart. This is what Jesus sees himself doing. So we're going to look over the next several weeks. We're going to look at every time you've heard it said, but I tell you, as this little renovation of the law happening. But I'm going to give you 2 examples, real brief, of what this looks like in practice. So we're going to continue on, really brief overviews. So Matthew 5:21. You have heard it said to the people long ago, you shall not murder, but anyone who murders will be subjected to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says raka is answerable to the court, and anyone who says you fool will be in danger to the fires of hell. He's quoting from the Torah here. You shall not murder. That's one of those 10. We got that one figured out. He quotes from the 10 Commandments, right? He says, you've heard it said, don't murder. And that's right. Everyone say, murder bad. Good. It's not twist words up here. Right? It's a solid reminder. It's a reliable indicator of God's will. Murder bad. But I say to you, so what he's doing right here, he's not contradicting the law. If he was contradicting, he said, you've heard it said murder is bad, but I tell you, stab away, right? This is like, that's contradicting. He says, no. But I tell you, this new authority alongside, this is this authority that fulfills the intent and purpose of the command. Okay, for a very small circle of human beings, hopefully, not murdering someone who cuts you off while you're driving on the road is not like the biggest hurdle we have to get through every single day, right? Not murdering someone would be a real step forward for a very small circle of humanity. But for most of us, that's not our issue, right? For most of us in here, not murdering someone every day is not like we got it figured out. We're good. We don't murder people. We got it, right? For Jesus in this command, the pointer's to the real issue within the human heart, right? We're renovating the human experience, the human heart, the human mind. You with me? It's about pride, contempt, and anger, right? For you've heard it said, don't do this, but I tell you, if you've even had that harbored thought in your heart and mind, you've already done it. We're recreating people. You with me? What Jesus wants to see is the ethic of the kingdom in real issues, right? It's about these little movies that we play in our head that when we don't like someone. We degrade humanity of that person. We do all those things in our own head. We erase their personhood in our own mind, right? We murder them in our minds without actually doing it. Jesus says, that's the issue right here. Let's fulfill the real command. Not murdering someone, fine. Let's not pretend to murder them over and over in our head and degrade who they are as a person. It doesn't abolish the authority of the command, don't murder. Still, don't murder. But it brings a new degree of fulfillment. Are you following me? Great. One more, real quick again, 5:27, we're skipping down. You've heard it said, you shouldn't commit adultery. But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed, you know what? But I tell you, anyone who looks at a woman or man lustfully has already committed adultery with him or her in his or her heart. We're in a gender-inclusive language here. What's he quoting again? Don't commit adultery. The 10 Commandments. Good. Well, look at here, Jim Bob. It's the same thing. To simply not get in bed with someone is a real step forward for some people, okay? Just like murder, don't murder, okay? Good. But to not do that when the impulse, the desire comes. But Jesus says, right, don't do that. But let's explore the real issue in the human heart. The longing to be desired and known is just lust and insatiable self-indulgence. Those are the issues that are exposed. Those are the issues Jesus wants us to deal with. And what he means, I've come to abolish, and I'm actually fulfilling the purpose. I'm taking the commandments, I'm bringing new covenant people who live in an upside down state, who drive on the left side of the road in a right side driving world. They're being shaped into these Jeremiah 31 people. And it's going to lead to collisions. It's counterintuitive. These get real counterintuitive the farther you go down. The first ones don't seem too bad. Okay, don't murder people, also be nice to people. That's not too bad. But you jump down a few and it's like, okay, you want me to do what now? And it gets a little more trepidatious. You with me? This is what these weeks are going to look like, breaking all these down, right? If you've ever, again, played an instrument before, anyone who play one? Play an instrument. Okay. Anyone here ever learned a second language? We're going to get more people involved, I think. Okay, not a lot of bilingual instrument players in here. Well, when you first pick up an instrument, what's the first thing you do is they go, this is how you hold it, whatever, and then your exercises are this. You play scales. Lots and lots of scales. Endlessly. Matt Walter, my trumpet teacher, if you handed me a trumpet today, I think I could turn off my brain and I could probably still play all the major scales with my brain turned off. This is what you do. I have never once, except for a few times, come across an actual scale played in music. And I do it and I go, oh, G major scale, right at the scale. Oh, it's so great. But you don't ever come across it. So why do you do that? Because you internalize these movements, these feelings, and you can move on, you can take them, you can adapt them and become more complicated. It's a foundation piece. You with me? Not murdering, foundational. But let's go from scales and let's extend forward. Scales aren't bad. We're not abolishing scales. I played them until I stopped playing in college when I graduated. But we're going to build past that. Jesus is saying right here, these 613 commands, this will for Israel, had a time and a place that they were great. Scales were great to give you the foundation. But now to fulfill them, we need to speak the language of the kingdom. We need to play the music of the kingdom. We need to live our lives like Jeremiah 31 people together. It's a balance Jesus is trying to strike. And when people say, let's just ditch the Old Testament, I really despise that, right? It's complicated and it sounds funny, right? The Old Testament's complicated, it sounds funny. Besides, the New Testament's all great. Let's just get rid of it. No, let's not get rid of it. This is the quickest thing. This is how we're ending. Matthew 5:18. Go backwards here. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter nor the stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law until everything has been accomplished. He's talking to the absolute details of the Torah. He actually restates Genesis 1:1 there, where he says, heaven and earth disappear. That is what's above and what's below. It's the same language from Genesis 1:1. Isn't it just so great when you read multiple languages? So good. It's a statement of God's will, down to the absolute smallest stroke of a pen, the tiniest letter. The words there in Greek are iota and karaha. Ooh, a better translation of that is not one dot or squiggle. I want to say dot or squiggle. Right? What on earth does that mean? Here we go. Where's my computer? Blake, go to the next slide. Yeah, okay, so that's Hebrew. Hi, everyone, that's handwritten Hebrew. I didn't write it, though. So the iota is the word yod in Hebrew, and it's the Greek writing of how to write out the word yod, the letter yod. This is the letter yod. It's an apostrophe. So when it says not one iota, not one yod, will change. If you look at handwritten Hebrew, that can look like an ink dripped off the end of a pen sometimes. And you're like, is that a yod? Or is it like, did the guy make a mistake? You with me? Hebrew is really hard. When it says not one squiggle or anything, this is the Hebrew letter, I got to go from the right side, dalet. Everyone say dalet. It's the D sound. And the word Adam in Hebrew, that's the D in the middle of it, Adam. This, I lost it, is the letter resh. Say resh. That's the R sound. Now I want you to look at those two next to each other. I want you to tell me what's different. There's like that much. Like if I wrote those with my handwriting, you'd never know which is which. But if you put a resh where a dalet is supposed to be an Adam, you go from the word Adam to Aram, and that means a pile of stone. Changes the meaning quite a bit. Not one dot, not one squiggle. What's the next slide? I forget. It doesn't want to? I don't even, what is it? It might be important. Oh, yeah. I put a dalet and a resh next to each other, and I was teaching class, and there it is. And dalet does not equal resh. You can't believe how many people have tattoos where those are flipped around, and it's hilarious. Anyway, moving on. That's the difference, these tiny dots and squiggles. Jesus is affirming, right, to the very smallest yod, to the very smallest little karaha, these little squiggles. None of that is changing. Because if you take out or change any of those little dalets and squiggles, you change the meanings of everything. He's affirming to the smallest details that the Torah remains the statement of God's will until everything is accomplished. And Jesus is bringing those things to their accomplishment. They're not second rate. They're not to be denigrated. His disciples need to learn the law of the Torah. They need to learn from them and do them. He says, whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. But wait a minute, Phil. Didn't you say he was coming to fulfill them and do them differently? It sounds, what do you mean I have to fulfill them? When he said he was fulfilling them, and now what's the difference? Why is he saying to do them? What does this mean? Can you talk clearly for half a second? 5:20. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. I don't know about you, but sometimes I read that and I go, well, it's been a good run, everyone. I'll see you down there, right? It's like, oh man, I'm not going to get it done, right? The Pharisees and the teachers of the Torah, these are the Bible professors, the scholars, the local community leaders, the pastors, the teachers. They're the people who've made their livelihood, their life's passion, working and studying the 613 commandments of the Torah down to the smallest dot and the smallest squiggle, and to obey them. But righteousness is about right relationships. It's about being formed by God's will so that I do right by God and the people in every situation. And so Jesus is saying, unless you do right by God and surpass that of the Pharisees, yeah, we're done for, right? I was like, you don't get to enter the kingdom of heaven. Right? Now, dang, I guess I'm out. I guess I'll go try some other religious club. Maybe I'll take up golf, right? I never know if I'm left or right-handed, but I could figure it out. What are you supposed to do? And if you're in that place, it's because you think Jesus is saying, I'm calling my disciples to play the Pharisees' game, but just do it even harder and even better. But if you think really hard, it's not what he's going to do, right? He quotes from the Torah and he gives this new teaching to internalize the purpose of the command, right? He's calling his disciples to do nothing less than completely renovate their heart. This is one of those paradoxes of Jesus' teaching. In the next several weeks, you're going to work through issues of pride, of lust, of contempt, the way that we wiggle out and escape having to let people know who we are, just bending and distorting the truth. He's going to expose all that stuff about humanity, these deep core issues about the state of hearts and minds. He's going to call us to a higher degree of obedience and faithfulness, of relationships towards other people that seem possible. You're going to hear the commands, and the last statement is going to be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. It's like you're crushed by the teachings. But it's not a joke. He doesn't say, like, be perfect as my heavenly Father is perfect. He fully expects the followers to do this and live this way. But at the same time, he knows that when we look at the way he lives and calls the disciples to live like that, it's like climbing Mount Everest. Who could live like that all the time? Like, how can you outdo the Pharisees? How could you outdo all those things? And if you hold on to that paradox, if you hold on to that, how is that possible? Then you've got it. You've figured it out. It's like you're there. You've got the issue at heart. And it comes together in the teaching of Jesus. He brings all this together, and you're going to see these dots connect. This is how we're ending. Matthew 22, 34 through 40. We're going to tie them all together. What did I say? 34 through 40. Hearing that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, the Pharisees got together. One of them, an expert of the law, tested him with this question. Teacher, which of these is the greatest commandment of the law? Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is this. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. Does that sound familiar? Know God, love neighbor, live justice, forever. Did you hear it? Who are the Jeremiah 31 people that Jesus sees himself bringing into being, right? Who's he speaking with? Who's he calling and eating with? It's the people who were so blown away by the fact Jesus moved towards them in spite of all the crap in their lives. Jesus comes and he forgives them. It's who's gathered around the Sermon on the Mount. And it takes part every single week when we gather. So we're reenacting the forgiveness, the forgiveness parties that Jesus threw as he moved towards people, as he offered them the kingdom of heaven. That slowly over time, that begins to affect you. That you have these teachings, this paradox, how could I possibly do it? That gets exposed. This isn't about murder, it's about how I view other people. Why did I find myself superior to them? Why did I start doing that? How did that happen? And over the years of driving on the certain side of the road, I've made that my nature. That's what's in focus here. That all the Torah and the prophets are trying to raise and expose this brokenness in humanity so that Jesus can move towards it and work in grace to forgive it. That is the Sermon on the Mount.